World Gone Mad, Season 2, Episode 11, In Sickness and in Health, Part 1. Flashback to 10 years ago. Lincoln, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, in sickness and in health? Lincoln whispers, I do. We hear the man say, and with my great pleasure, I declare them husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. They kiss, and we hear the applause. We see it's after the wedding, and everyone is getting together inside of the hotel for the after party. And we see Lincoln and his brother James walking and thanking everyone for coming as they're walking. James says, "This is it, big bro." Lincoln waves at people and says to James, "I've been waiting so long for this, and it still feels like a dream." James says, "Well, I'm happy for you, big bro." Anyway, the wife asked Hayley if she ever wanted kids. Lincoln says, Nah, slow down a bit there, Jesus. I want to spend time with this wonderful wife, just a few years at least before I go doing that. James says, Alright, well, whenever that happens, it'll be nice. And plus, Uncle James sounds kinda cool, don't you think? Lincoln laughs and says, yeah, someday. Then Lincoln's sister, named Ashley, runs up to Lincoln and says, Hey, been trying to find you. It's time for your first dance with Hayley. Lincoln says, Alright, I'll be right there. We see James get up on the stage. I want to propose a toast. Well, this is a big day. I remember being here about 10 months ago when Lincoln, Hayley, my wife Barb, and myself, and a few other friends were here. He stayed at this very hotel, and we got drunk out of our minds, and Hayley said she wanted to reserve this place for today, which was the only available date at the time. We didn't really know what she meant. But even though we all had a pretty good buzz on, later that night, Hayley popped the question to Lincoln, and we all knew how madly in love with her he was. I don't think there was even a bit of hesitation. He said yes as fast as you can click on something. It was instant, like he was waiting for this his whole life. Lincoln smiles, and now here we are, almost a year later, and together we celebrate the wonderful life that they are about to have together. So I want you all to raise your glass to the future, Mr. and Mrs. West, and for the journey and the amazing future that is upon them. We see Lincoln kiss Hayley, and then we see them have their first dance as we cut to the future. In the future. Lincoln and Dave are both sitting down against an old truck, and Lincoln's face is covered in blood. And he looks at Dave, who is sitting next to him, and says, I remember that day. Sydney is going at 100 miles an hour. She sees Matthew's truck from far down the road. She speeds the RV up. Two of the guys in the back pull out their guns and they try to stop the RV. They don't have any bullets left after the fight, and Matthew is driving as fast as he can. The roads are getting icy, and Matthew has no choice but to slow down. Sydney speeds up the RV and is driving right next to them now. Matthew tries to speed up and he gets past the RV, but there's deadheads on the road, and he tries to get around them, but then the truck hydroplanes and they run right off the road. The moment Sydney sees them crash into the ditch, she quickly pulls the RV over and gets out with her machine gun. As the Vipers quickly try to run from the car and into the woods, she shoots and kills all of them, including Matthew. We see she killed all 5 of them, and Matthew is still alive, but he's been shot to hell. We see him crawling on the ground and saying, "You may have won this one, darling, but you'll never win the war." Sydney looks annoyed and he says, "That's why your sister's dead." And then Matthew gets shot in the head, and she stomps his head in as she lets out a big scream. Back at the base, we see there's now a thick layer of snow in the military base. We see Tom walking the streets. We can see his wounds have opened up again after the fight he just had with Dave. His hands are covered in blood, and as it's still snowing, we see him meet up with Lincoln, Luke, and Kezia as she's taking them to a safe place to stay for the night. Lincoln, Tom, and Luke are walking with Kezia, and she says, "Just down this street." They enter a building. Kezia opens the door and says, "Hope this'll do. We have food, running water. However, if you use the hot water, go easy, if you don't mind." Lincoln says, "I appreciate this." Kezia says, "I'm the one that should be doing the thanking, Mr. West. You saved this place. I think you damn well earn your keep." Lincoln asks, "You have the room?" Kezia says, "For you? Hell yes. Now each of you have rooms, or if you want to stay in this place altogether, that's fine too." Lincoln says, "Well, we really appreciate that. What was your name again, sorry?" She says, "Kezia." "It's okay, we've all had a rather shitty night. Oh, and I'm just saying, there's tequila in the liquor cabinet." Lincoln laughs and says, "Well, glad to be working with you, Kezia." And Kezia leaves the 3 of them, and Lincoln locks the door just to be safe. Tom says, "Maybe staying together is the smartest play." Lincoln says, "All right, let's get through the night. We have a big day tomorrow." We see Sydney in the RV arriving back at the base. The guard lets her in, and she gives him her gun and says, "All done." As she walks away, and the guard seems shocked to hell. We see everyone is asleep, but Tom is still awake. He's trying to sleep, but he keeps hearing gunshots in his head, fires, death, and every time he closes his eyes, he keeps seeing it on repeat. The next morning, we see Tom wake up and walk into the kitchen. Lincoln says, "Good morning, sir. Coffee." Tom takes it and says, "Thanks, buddy." Lincoln says, "Well, this is it, big bro." Tom says, "Are you nervous?" Lincoln says, "Well, you and I both know I'd be lying if I said I wasn't." Tom says, "Well, I'm not gonna die today. My time isn't now. Neither is yours." Tom is about to walk out and he says, "There's no more goodbyes." We see everyone walking out for the day. Lincoln is putting his jacket on. We see everyone loading up at the front gate. Lincoln is loading up some guns along with the other soldiers, and Dave walks up and starts helping. And Dave says, "Well, this will either be our last day above ground or we'll be hearing that beautiful sound of death real soon." Lincoln says, "Nah, this isn't the end. We've got things left to do here." We then see some of the soldiers and they're saying goodbye to their families and they are ready to go to war like real soldiers. We see Lincoln, Tom, Sydney, Dave, Luke, Kezia, Blake, and over 50 other soldiers are getting in the trucks, and we see Kezia and Lincoln ride in the RV together. Luke and Blake are in another truck, and Dave is in with some other soldiers, and Tom gets in another truck as we see them drive off to go finish this. We see Lincoln and Kezia in the RV together, and Kezia asks, "You think we can do it?" Lincoln says, and Kezia asks, "What we did last night, do you think this is going to be the end?" Lincoln says, "I hope it is. Your people are such a help for us." Kezia says, "Oh, no, they're not my people." Lincoln says, "Well then, who is?" Kezia says, "William was nothing but a man who died a coward. Dave has been nothing but a liar and a murderer. And then there's me. I think that these people deserve someone that can lead them through the hard times like this. Someone who can risk their lives to keep them safe. Someone who would do that." Lincoln interrupts and says, "I'm talking to her." Kezia says, "Okay, well, you're a leader. How do you do it exactly? I mean, how can you live with the fact that you are responsible for all those lives?" Lincoln says, "When I first found my people, I'll admit, I didn't know what I was doing. Leading people takes experience, and I'm not going to lie to you on this one. It takes facing death, facing the evil, which is what we are all about to do. And you gotta be strong." Kezia looks over and Lincoln says, "For your people." Then Kezia stops the RV, and they see from up the hill a massive herd of deadheads. Lincoln and them see this from far, and all the trucks pull over. We see everyone step out, and Tom says, "I don't think I brought enough tequila for this one." Lincoln looks suspicious and says, "Yeah, but look at them. They're all lined up across the road, and we've traveled this road last night on our way to the base." Kezia says, "Someone led them here. Someone's trying to block our way." Lincoln looks down and says, "Well, geez, I wonder who did that, for fuck's sakes. Sydney asks, well, we can't go through them, that's for damn sure, so Blake says, we could try another road. There's gotta be another way to the factory. Lincoln says, nah, we aren't circling around these roads trying to find a way in. Sydney says, yeah, but we can't get through them. Lincoln slowly turns around and says, yes. Yes, we can. We see Lincoln and the group watching the herd from far, and we see Chris at the factory. He loads his gun and says, this is gonna work. We hear Chris talking as Lincoln and Tom both take out 2 deadheads in the woods. Chris is saying, once they come for us, the dead will block their way. They'll be scared. Oh yes, they will. Lincoln throws the dead body on the ground and takes out his machete and says, This is the only way we're gonna make it through. We're gonna gut them and cover ourselves at the insides. Tom looks at everyone and says, look, anyone that wants to turn back, go ahead. But if you stay here, you die. And everyone looks nervous, but they decide to cover themselves with the guts. We hear Chris saying, they are gonna see that herd and they're gonna be angry. Anger drives people mad. It will consume them. And they are gonna fight to the death and try to get to us. And if we're lucky, most of Lincoln's people will die by the dead. And if any remains, they'll be exhausted. They won't be able to fight for shit. And well, Chris clicks his gun and says, then we will show the Queen how willing we really are. Meanwhile, we see the group is now covered in reanimated blood and guts, and Lincoln's whole group is ready. And Lincoln says, all right, here's the plan. We're gonna go in 2 teams. We all have to march with the dead. With all of us, we are gonna turn them around, and we're gonna bring them right back to Chris's doorstep. Once we arrive, Luke, I want you to take a team in the woods, and I want you and all of them and the snipers, making sure that when the rest of us go inside, you guys have us covered. Now the second team is gonna lead them right towards the front gate. Once the deadheads are close enough, we split off from the horde. The Vipers are gonna panic. Chris is gonna call full duty at the front gate, and he's gonna put all his people at risk. And when they're distracted at the front gate, I take the rest of us through and we enter through the back gate. And at the most, we'll have to kill 2 to 3 guards, if that. And then when we're in, we kill everyone inside those walls. Meanwhile, Luke and the rest of you cover us from outside. Lincoln asks, so Luke is out. Who's coming in? We see Tom raise his hand. Sydney, Kezia, Blake, and 3 other soldiers, and finally, Dave. Lincoln looks at Dave and asks, can I trust you in there? Dave says, come on, Mr. West. I think you know if I was gonna cut your head off, it would have happened by now. Lincoln says, well, okay, it's settled. Let's go. Later that night, Hayley is in the cell and she's just shaking. She looks to be cold and she starts crying. Chris hears her from down the hall and starts laughing out of joy. We see Chris go outside, and he walks up to the roof of one of the buildings. There is more snow that appears to be on the way. Alexander comes up and says, "Hey boss, we were ready to do a quick patrol. Wanted to run it by you." Chris nods and Alexander says, "Cool." He starts walking away and Chris asks, "So how'd it go with the girl?" Alexander says, "Simple. Simple talking to. Just telling her who's in charge." Chris slowly walks up to him and says, Do you remember who's in charge?" Alexander says, "Yes, sir. You." Chris looks suspicious and says, "Well, next time you go behind my back, there will be consequences. You understand?" Alexander says, "Yes, boss. I won't do it again." Chris then hears his men on the other tower freaking out, and he yells over, "What the hell is going on?" We see the herd heading for the main gate of the factory. Chris looks angry and then he says to the guards, "Eric, Josh, what the hell is going on out there?" His two men and the tower get blown up by Luke. Luke reloads and Chris sees this and tries to run off the building. He and Alexander climb down the ladder and then we see another building blow up. Lincoln and the rest are inside the herd, and his walkie is going off, and Luke says, "Lincoln, you're in the clear. I repeat, Lincoln, you're in the clear." Lincoln clicks his walkie twice, and he and the group let the dead approach the gate. A bunch of Vipers try to run and try to fortify the gate. We see Chris, Alexander, and just a few other Vipers have narrowly made it back inside. Chris is angry and he says, "Those bastards turned a whole fucking herd around." Chris says, "We are not sitting here waiting to die." Alexander says, "I already sent a group out there. Those snipers will be dead real soon." Chris smiles and says, "Good. Now while they do that, let's kill everything inside these walls."
Fathers lost without a trace, a nation blind to their disgrace since he's been here. And I see
we then see Lincoln, Tom, Sydney, Kezia, Blake, and Dave, who have circled around to the back gate. We see 4 guards and they are about to take them out, but then they get called in at the front gate to stop the dead from getting in. Kezia lowers the bow and they then hop the fence. Lincoln is whispering, "Tom, Kezia, Blake, take left. The rest of you, come with me."
Houses burnt beyond repair. The smell of death is in the air. A woman weeping in despair.
Out of nowhere, we hear a gunshot from the distance.
Trails are lighting up the sky. It's another family's turn to die. A child afraid to even cry out says,
We see someone hit Blake, and Blake is bleeding out and falls to the ground. Lincoln and the others quickly click their guns as Blake bleeds out on the ground.
"In your eyes, anymore, only sadness. And I see no bravery, no bravery."
Luke and the snipers are almost out of ammo. Luke looks worried and walkies Lincoln. "Lincoln, are you there? Did you guys make it in yet? Lincoln!" The guard tells Luke they're gonna be fine. It's just gonna take a few more minutes. Luke looks worried and has a really bad feeling, and the guard yells, "Luke!" Luke and the snipers turn around to see coming up the hill
All men need to accept their fate. Wives and daughters cut and raped. A generation drenched in hate says he has been here. And I see
A big group of the Vipers come riding in from a distance, and they are charging at Luke and all of the snipers.
Animal on his